When I sat down at the dinner table to ask my parents for help with college, they told me to be independent, and that one word would cost them everything 9 years later. My name is Julia, and this isn't a tale of getting even. It's about what happens when you realize the people who are supposed to have your back would rather toss you aside to protect someone else's fairy tale. It all came apart during one meal, but the cracks had been showing for years. I grew up in a beautiful house in a quiet suburb of Boston. The lawn was always mowed, the shutters were always painted, and the front door was always polished. From the street, we were the model American family. Behind that door, things were different. My mother, Patricia, had 2 daughters. My older sister, Elise, was her princess. I was the afterthought. It was an unspoken rule of the house, but everyone felt its weight. Elise got the newest phone and private tutoring for her SATs. I got her old textbooks and was told to study in the library. The refrigerator was a shrine to Elise, her debate team trophies, her soccer certificates, her modeling photos. I remember putting my straight-A report card on the fridge one year, right in the center. When I came home from school, it was gone. My mom said, "The fridge is too messy. It was in the way." She didn't even look at me as she said it. My father, Marcus, was different. He wasn't mean, he was just absent. He spent most of his time in his study hiding behind a newspaper. But occasionally, when my mom wasn't around, he'd pat me on the shoulder and whisper, "I'm proud of you, kid." Then he'd vanish before anyone could see us talking. I held on to those tiny moments, convincing myself that college would be my escape. I worked like a maniac in high school. I studied until my eyes burned, and I got into a top-tier university with a partial academic scholarship. I just needed help covering the rest of the tuition. I spent days building my case. I printed out the financial aid forms, I created a detailed budget with my part-time job income, and I prepared a presentation for my parents. At dinner that night, I laid my folder on the table. "I got into my dream school," I said, my voice shaking with excitement. "I have a scholarship, I just need a little help with the remaining costs." My mom didn't even glance at the papers. "Julia, we've discussed this, you need to learn self-sufficiency." I was stunned. "But you're paying for Elise's full tuition at her private university." "Elise's situation requires our support," she said, slicing her steak. "She has potential that needs nurturing. You're resilient, you'll manage." I looked at my dad, desperate. He just stared at his plate, carving his meat into smaller and smaller pieces, refusing to meet my gaze. That was it. The conversation was over. I picked up my papers with trembling hands, but I refused to cry in front of them. Later that night, my father stopped me in the hallway. For a second, I thought he was going to fight for me. Instead, he mumbled, "Your mother has her reasons." That was all he had to offer. I packed a single suitcase that night. At dawn the next morning, I left the house. I put my house key on the counter. No note, no goodbye. As I walked down the driveway, I saw my father sitting in his car, his face illuminated by the dashboard light. He watched me leave. I watched him watch me. Neither of us waved, and I never looked back. College was a war of attrition. My dorm room was a concrete box. The mattress was as thin as cardboard, the radiator clanked, and I didn't own a blanket. That first night, I slept in my winter coat. Within a week, I had 3 jobs. I scrubbed dishes in a greasy diner. I stocked shelves at a convenience store, and I cleaned dorms on the weekend. I barely slept. I ate whatever the diner was about to throw out. It was survival, pure and simple. 2 weeks in, I hit a low point. I called my mother, hoping, stupidly, that she might have softened. She answered on the second ring. "You made your choice," she said. Then she hung up. The call lasted exactly 6 seconds. Later that night, Elise texted me. "Mom says you're being dramatic. Just come home and apologize." I stared at the screen, realization dawning. They weren't telling people they refused to help me. They were painting me as the runaway, the ungrateful child who abandoned her loving family. I was the villain in their story. Freshman year nearly broke me. I burned my hand on a hot plate at work and fell asleep during a midterm exam. My grades tanked, and I was on the verge of losing my scholarship. But one professor, Dr. Robert Hale, noticed me. He saw me sleeping in the back row. After class, he pulled me aside. "You look like you're falling apart," he said bluntly. I laughed bitterly and told him everything. He didn't offer pity, he offered a solution. He found me a paid research assistant position analyzing data for his study. It wasn't a fortune, but it replaced my graveyard shift at the store. For the first time in months, I could breathe. Meanwhile, my mother was busy curating her narrative. At Thanksgiving, I wasn't invited. My grandmother called me to ask why I was being so difficult. I tried to explain what happened, but she cut me off. Patricia would never do that. You've always been headstrong. And just like that, I lost half my extended family in a single phone call. A few days later, I saw a photo online, Elise standing next to a brand new BMW, a giant red bow on the hood. The caption read, "So blessed." My mother commented, "Anything for my princess." I closed my laptop and decided to stop being a victim. I decided to build a life they couldn't touch. Sophomore year, I met a girl named Maya. She sat next to me in biology. "You look terrible," she said, not unkindly. I shrugged. "Thanks. It's a compliment," she said with a grin. "It means you're still fighting." We became inseparable. She wasn't rich either. Her family drove a beat-up van, but they adored her. One night, sitting outside the science building on a cold bench, I told Maya everything. The dinner, the scholarship, the BMW, the lies, my father's silence. When I was done, she just wiped the mustard from her mouth and said something that changed my life. "You don't owe them a happy ending. You owe yourself a life." Around then, I started writing a research paper. It was boring. Something about healthcare data optimization. I wrote it during breaks at work, on the bus, in the laundry room. When Dr. Hale read it, he just nodded and said, "This has legs." I didn't believe him at the time, but I kept working on it. That paper would eventually become the blueprint for my entire career. One night, I got an email from my dad. No greeting, no explanation. Just 7 words. "I hope you're getting enough sleep, Dad." I stared at the screen for a long time, then closed my laptop. Some words arrived too late. In the spring of my sophomore year, the diner shut down. I lost my main source of income overnight. I sat on my bed, calculator in hand, trying to make the numbers work. They didn't. For a terrifying moment, I considered calling my mother. My thumb hovered over her contact. I put the phone down. Instead, I found a new gig doing data entry online, working until 3 a.m. Maya started hiding protein bars in my backpack because she knew I wasn't eating. Meanwhile, Elise was spending a semester in Italy. I watched her story on Instagram. Gondola rides, fine wine, picturesque sunsets. Same parents, wildly different lives. Then, a turning point. I was awarded a fully funded summer fellowship, housing, meals, and a living stipend included. For 10 weeks, I didn't have to worry about money. I could just learn and build. My future started to feel like it wasn't a pipe dream. Years passed. I graduated with honors. When I walked across that stage, my biological family wasn't there. Only Maya. She screamed louder than anyone else. We celebrated at a cheap diner with a greasy pizza and soda. It was perfect. I got a job at a healthcare tech firm. I learned fast, got promoted, and started building a software platform for small medical clinics, a tool designed to streamline their chaotic record-keeping. It was the platform I had first drafted in Dr. Hale's class. The first year was brutal. I had only a handful of clients, and I worked constantly. But the company slowly grew. I called it HealthBridge Solutions. Then, one evening my phone rang. It was Elise, the first time we'd spoken in years. "I need a favor," she said. "What kind?" "A financial one." "How much?" 10,000. I paused. "No." She hung up. Half an hour later my mother called screaming, "How dare you refuse your sister?" I ended that call too. Something felt wrong. Elise had claimed Mom didn't know she was calling. Clearly she did. Some people just don't change. Relatives started texting me, repeating the same story. "Mom is heartbroken. Mom is crying. Why are you so selfish?" My mother even posted a vague status online about ungrateful children and received hundreds of supportive comments. I ignored it. I focused on HealthBridge. 2 years later, we scored major funding. We hired a team, opened a real office, and started landing bigger contracts. That's when I met Jason. He was the CFO of a regional clinic network. We hit it off at a conference. He loved my software. We were in advanced talks for a contract that would be the biggest in my company's history. We exchanged cards. I didn't know Jason would soon become Elise's fiancé. Months later, a heavy envelope arrived. It was a wedding invitation. Elise Ashford and Jason Pierce. I read it twice. A small slip of paper fell out. My father's handwriting. "Please come, Dad," I called Maya. "My sister is marrying my biggest client." There was a long pause. "Are you going?" I looked at my dad's note. Yes. The weeks before the wedding were chaotic. Part of the contract process with Jason's company involved background checks and credential verifications for all employees. One name in their system caught my eye: Elise Ashford. According to her HR file, she held a master's degree in health administration. Something in my gut screamed. Years earlier, Maya had tried to find her professional license and found nothing. I followed procedure. Everyone got the same verification process. A few days later, several names were flagged for review. I didn't ask which ones, but I had a sinking feeling. The results were due the day before the wedding. The wedding was a lavish affair at a vineyard. White flowers everywhere. Champagne towers. Everything looked expensive, and everything looked perfect. Maya came with me. As we entered, Aunt Carol spotted us. "I didn't expect you to show up," she sniffed. "I was invited," I replied. She frowned and walked away. Seconds later, my mother appeared. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "Attending my sister's wedding," I said calmly. "You haven't been part of this family for years." "Whose choice was that?" Her jaw tightened. "Don't make a scene. I'm not here to make a scene." She forced a plastic smile and turned away. My father approached. He looked smaller, older. He hesitated, then hugged me. It was the first real hug in nearly a decade. I stood frozen, then hugged him back. "Hi, Dad." His eyes welled up. Elise arrived, radiant in her white dress. She gave me a hug that felt hollow, like a performance. "Congrats," I said. "Thanks," she said. My mother quickly guided me to a table in the back, near the kitchen, as far away from the stage and the head table as possible. Some things never change. During dinner, I overheard my mother introducing Elise. "My daughter is a healthcare executive. We're so proud." Someone asked about me. My mother smiled thinly. "Oh, Julia is still figuring things out." Maya squeezed my hand. I stayed quiet. Then the speeches started. My mother's speech was a masterpiece of fiction. She spoke of sacrifice and supporting Elise's dreams. She praised Elise's education and her success. "I raised my daughter to be independent," she said, beaming. Independent, the same word she used to justify abandoning me. The crowd clapped. I stayed silent. I planned to leave right after dinner. Then a board member from Jason's company, Trevor, recognized me. "Julia Ashford?" Jason turned. Confusion dawned on his face. "The Julia Ashford?" I nodded. He looked shocked. "Wait, you're Elise's sister?" "Yes. She never told me," my mother intervened. "Jason, don't bother Julia." Jason frowned. "Mrs. Ashford, do you know who this is?" "My daughter." "No, this is the CEO of HealthBridge Solutions." Silence. I watched my mother's mask crack for the first time. Jason grabbed the microphone. "Everyone, I just learned something incredible." The entire reception froze. He introduced me, my company, and the potential partnership. He praised my business acumen. Applause filled the room. People were looking at me differently now, not as the family failure, but as the successful one. Elise looked terrified. And then the final piece fell into place. Jason pulled me aside onto a balcony overlooking the vineyard. His face was pale. My team sent the final report. Your sister's degree doesn't exist. The words hung in the air. He stared at me. You knew? I suspected. He gripped the railing. They confirmed she never finished college. I said nothing. Jason closed his eyes. I'm going to ask her myself. We went back inside. The reception was buzzing. Jason walked straight to Elise. Did you graduate? He asked. She paled. What? Did you graduate? People nearby fell silent. She laughed nervously. We can talk about this later. Did you graduate? Her face went white. My mother rushed over. Jason, lower your voice. He ignored her. You told me you had a master's degree. You submitted falsified documents to my company. Silence. Then Jason looked at my mother. Did you know? My mother straightened. My daughter graduated with honors. No, she didn't, Jason said, his voice cold. She didn't graduate at all. The room was dead quiet, 200 guests, not a single sound. Elise started sobbing. I was going to tell you, when, after you defrauded my company, my mother tried to interrupt. Jason raised his hand. Stop! The word echoed. He turned to me. She's the only honest Ashford in this room. Every eye was on me. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The truth was evident. My father stood by the bar, tears streaming down his face. Jason walked away. The wedding was over. Elise collapsed. Guests grabbed their phones. The fairy tale had shattered. My mother turned on me, her face twisted in fury. Are you happy now? She snarled. I looked at her calmly. You ruined her life, she hissed. No, Mom, I said, steady and clear. Elise ruined her own life by lying. She was speechless. I won't sacrifice my integrity to protect this family's lies anymore. I continued. For the first time in my life, the crowd wasn't on her side. I saw doubt, then realization, in their eyes. Without another word, she turned and walked away. In the parking lot, my father called my name. I knew it was wrong, he whispered. Everything. He confessed to being a coward. I chose peace, he said. I shook my head. That wasn't peace, that was abandonment. He nodded, tears falling. I can't forgive you tonight, I said. That's fair, he replied. The fallout was swift. Relatives called to apologize. The story my mother had crafted was collapsing. Elise lost her job and her engagement. The honeymoon was canceled. Everything built on the lie fell apart. A few days later, I got a text from Elise. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. I wasn't ready. Weeks later, a package arrived. It was my old strata certificate, the one removed from the fridge years ago. A note from Dad. It was never cluttered. It was always yours. I cried. Not because it fixed anything, but because someone finally told the truth. I emailed my mother. I told her that if she wanted a relationship with me, it had to start with the truth. She never replied. I called my father. If you want to be my dad out loud. He said, okay. It was a beginning. Today, HealthBridge serves clinics across the state. But success isn't the best part. The best part is peace. Real peace. My father calls every Sunday. The conversations are short, weather, life, but they are honest. My mother still lives in that house. She never reached out. I've accepted that. Elise is back in school, earning a real degree. Maybe she's finally building her own life. I hope so. People ask if I feel vindicated. I don't. I never needed them to fail so I could succeed. I just needed freedom. My story isn't about revenge. It's about refusing to let someone else define your worth. It's about surviving, building something from nothing, and understanding that someone else's rejection does not decide your value. I learned that in a cold dorm room. I learned it washing dishes. I learned it at my sister's wedding. My name is Julia. I built my life with my own hands, found a family that chose me, and finally, after everything, that's enough. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my shoes?